Hey, before we begin, I want you to do something unusual. Put your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. That rhythm, steady, quiet, faithful, has been with you through every hard moment of your life. Every loss, every failure, every 3 a.m. spiral, every time the world felt too heavy. And it's still here. You're still here. That matters more than you know. Now, let me ask you something honest. When did you last feel truly calm? Not distracted calm, where you're scrolling through your phone and your mind goes quiet for a moment simply because it has something else to consume. Not exhausted calm, where you finally sleep, not because you found peace, but because your body simply gave out. I'm talking about something rarer, something deeper, genuinely at peace inside your own mind. Most people, when asked that question, go quiet. They search back through their recent memory, and they struggle to find it. And I think that says something important about the world we're living in right now. We are a generation drowning in stress, and it's not because our lives are uniquely terrible. It's because we've lost something the ancient Stoics understood with perfect clarity. We have confused the world's noise for our own thoughts. Think about your average morning. Before you've even gotten out of bed, your phone has already handed you 17 problems that aren't yours, 11 opinions you didn't ask for, and a scrolling feed of everything wrong with the world. And your nervous system, ancient, animal, loyal, responds to every single one, as if each notification is a predator, as if each negative headline is a threat to your survival. Your body doesn't know the difference between a tiger in the grass and a stressful email. It just floods you with cortisol and tells you, do something, fight, run, panic. And most of us, every single day, live inside that flood. We carry tomorrow's problems into today. We replay yesterday's conversations at 2 a.m., editing what we should have said, rehearsing arguments that are already over. We worry about things that haven't happened, catastrophizing, spiraling, assuming, and call it being realistic. And quietly, slowly, invisibly, it's exhausting us. Not just physically, but spiritually. That constant low hum of anxiety, that sense that something is wrong, that you're behind, that you're not enough, that the world is about to collapse, that is not the truth. That is just an untrained mind running on fear. And here is what the Stoics discovered over 2,000 years ago. Stress is not what happens to you. Stress is how you relate to what happens to you. Marcus Aurelius, a man who governed the largest empire on earth, who fought wars, survived plagues, buried his children, and carried the weight of millions of lives, wrote this in his private journal. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wasn't writing this for publication. He wasn't performing wisdom for an audience. He was writing it to himself as a reminder on the hardest days when everything around him was falling apart. And that reminder still reaches us today, 2 millennia later, because the truth hasn't changed. Human beings haven't changed. The weight of a worried mind feels exactly the same in 2026 as it did in 170 AD. But here is the beautiful, hopeful, deeply human truth. You can change your relationship with stress. Not with medication, though sometimes that helps and there is no shame in it. Not with escape, because escape only postpones. Not with willpower alone, because willpower without wisdom exhausts itself. But with habits. Small, deliberate, daily habits that slowly, patiently, gently rebuild the way your mind meets the world. The Stoics didn't just talk about peace, they practiced it every single day through specific habits, rituals, and disciplines that kept their minds sharp and their souls steady, even when everything around them was in chaos. And today, I'm going to walk you through 7 of the most powerful Stoic habits to eliminate stress. Not as ancient theory, but as living, breathing, practical tools for the life you are actually living right now. So settle in. This is going to take a little time, but I promise you, every minute will be worth it.
Habit 1. Ask one question first. Let's begin with the most fundamental habit of all, the one that sits underneath everything else like the foundation of a house. Before anxiety takes over, pause, take one breath, and ask yourself with total honesty, is this within my control? That's it. One question, 4 words. And yet Epictetus, a man who was born into slavery, who had nothing, owned nothing, who was once tortured by his master simply to prove a point, built his entire philosophy on this single question. Let that land for a moment. A man who had every reason to be consumed by rage, despair, and helplessness chose instead to ask, what in this situation is actually mine to change? And through that question, he found a freedom that his chains could never touch. He wrote in his Enchiridion, which means the handbook, some things are in our control, and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. Now, when you first read that, it can feel almost too simple. Of course, I know the difference between what I can and can't control. But do you? Think about the last time you were truly stressed. Really walk back into that moment. Was it a conversation that went badly? A decision someone else made? Traffic? The weather? A colleague's opinion of you? Something you said 3 years ago that you still haven't forgiven yourself for? A future that hasn't happened yet that you're already grieving? How much of that stress was about something you actually had the power to change? I'd gently suggest very little. Because here's what stress almost always is: your mind trying to control what it cannot control. It's energy, real, urgent energy, poured into a locked door, and the harder you push, the more exhausted you become. The Stoic habit is this: when you feel stress beginning to rise, before you react, before you spiral, before you catastrophize, you pause, you breathe, and you sort. 2 piles. Pile 1, things within my control. My response, my words, my effort, my attitude, my choices today. Pile 2, things outside my control. Other people's feelings, other people's decisions, the economy, the weather, the past, other people's opinions of me, the future. Everything in pile 1, act on it, fully, courageously, without delay. Everything in pile 2, and I want you to hear this with compassion, not harshness, put it down. Not because it doesn't matter, some of those things matter enormously, but because carrying them doesn't change them. It only changes you, and not for the better. Epictetus said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. This is not passive resignation. This is intelligent surrender, knowing where your energy belongs and refusing to waste a single drop of it on what was never yours to fix. The practical habit. Tonight, before you sleep, take a piece of paper. Write down everything that's stressing you right now, every worry, every fear, every unresolved thing. Then, next to each one, write either mine or not mine. For everything marked mine, make a plan. Take one small step tomorrow. For everything marked not mine, fold that corner of the paper over, physically, deliberately. That folded corner is a reminder. I see this, I acknowledge this, and I choose not to carry it. Do that every night for 1 week. Watch what happens to your sleep. Watch what happens to your mind. Because freedom doesn't come from solving every problem. It comes from finally knowing which problems are yours to solve. Habit 2. Begin each morning with reflection. Now let's talk about how you begin your day, because how you begin your morning is how you hand yourself to the world.
either prepared or vulnerable. Most of us, the moment our eyes open, reach for our phones. And I understand it. It's not weakness. It's not stupidity. It's a habit shaped by years of conditioning, by algorithms designed by some of the most brilliant engineers on Earth specifically to capture your attention in that soft, open, unguarded moment just after you wake. They know that in those first minutes of morning, your brain is in a theta state, deeply receptive, highly impressionable, almost hypnotically open to suggestion. And into that openness, the world immediately pours. News, controversy, comparison, anxiety. Before you've had a single thought of your own, you're already reacting to someone else's agenda. Marcus Aurelius understood something different. Every morning, before he met with senators, before he commanded armies, before he made decisions that shaped the lives of millions, he sat quietly with himself. He wrote, he reflected, he prepared his mind. And the man who would face the full crushing weight of empire arrived at each day not as a reactor, but as a responder. There is a profound difference between those two things. A reactor is controlled by whatever arrives. A responder has already met the day internally and chooses, consciously, how to engage. His morning practice was built around 3 questions. First, what kind of day might this be? Not in a fatalistic way, but in an honest one. Today will likely bring frustration, difficulty, people who disappoint me, moments that don't go to plan. He didn't pretend otherwise. He anticipated difficulty, not to dread it, but to be ready for it. Second, who do I want to be today? Patient, disciplined, generous, focused. He set an intention, a quiet internal compass before the noise of the day could scatter him. Third, what matters most? Not what's urgent, not what's demanding, but what truly, deeply matters. And he returned to that anchor throughout the day. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," and his morning practice was how he found that present before the world pulled him into 100 tomorrows at once. Now, I'm not asking you to become Marcus Aurelius. I'm not asking you to write a philosophical journal or wake up at 4 a.m. and meditate for an hour. I'm asking you for 5 minutes. 5 minutes before the phone, before the news, before the coffee even, if you can manage it. Sit up, put your feet on the floor, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths, and ask yourself quietly, what might challenge me today? How do I want to respond to it? What one thing truly matters to me today? That's it. You don't need to write it down. You don't need a special journal or a morning routine template from the internet. You just need 5 minutes of honest conversation with yourself before the world starts having one for you. Seneca said, retire into yourself as much as possible. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. And the first person you should associate with each morning, the first voice you should hear, the first perspective you should encounter, is your own. Because the morning is a threshold, a small sacred doorway between sleep and the world, and you get to choose what you carry through it. Carry your phone, and you carry everyone else's urgency. Carry your own mind, and you carry your own wisdom. Choose wisely every morning. It will change the entire texture of your days.
Habit 3. Imagine the worst, then let it go. This habit is the one that surprises people the most, because on the surface, it sounds counterintuitive, almost cruel. When you're already anxious, when stress is already pressing on your chest, why would I ask you to imagine the worst? Stay with me. The Stoics practiced something they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Every day, deliberately, calmly, systematically, they would imagine loss. Seneca, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Rome, would regularly practice living as if he had nothing. He wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Set aside a certain number of days
during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" He would sleep on a simple mat. He would wear plain clothing. He would eat modest food, not because he had to, but to practice the question, "If I lost everything, could I bear it?" And every time, the answer came back, "Yes, I could." Marcus Aurelius did the same. He would hold his most cherished things in his mind, his wife, his children, his empire, and remind himself gently, "These are temporary. They can be taken. This is the nature of all things." Not to become cold, not to stop loving them, but to love them more freely, without the desperate clinging fear of what losing them might mean. Here's the psychological truth behind this habit. Most of our stress doesn't live in what's actually happening. It lives in what we're afraid might happen. And that fear, because we refuse to look at it directly, grows in the dark. We avoid thinking about the worst case because we believe that if we imagine it, we somehow invite it, or that thinking about it will break us. But avoidance doesn't protect you from fear. It feeds it. When you refuse to look at the monster under the bed, it gets bigger every night. When you turn on the light and look, it's just shadows and shoes. The moment you clearly, calmly, honestly imagine the worst that could realistically happen, and then ask yourself, "Could I survive this?" something remarkable occurs. Your nervous system, which has been running on vague, undefined dread, gets a concrete answer. "Yes, I could survive that. I've survived things just as hard. I still have my mind. I still have my capacity to choose. I still have myself." The philosopher and psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps and lost nearly everything, wrote something that the Stoics would have recognized immediately. "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That is Stoicism expressed through survival. The practice is this: once a week, or when fear is particularly loud, sit quietly and ask, "What is the worst that could realistically happen here? If it did happen, how would I respond? What resources do I have? What has helped me before? Is my life, my mind, my core self still intact in that scenario?" Walk through it, fully, calmly, and then, and this is the crucial part, let it go. Don't dwell, don't catastrophize, just look, acknowledge, answer, release. Fear needs your refusal to face it in order to survive. When you face it head-on, with honesty and with stoic calm, it loses almost all of its power over you. And what remains is not fearlessness, but something better: confidence. The quiet, grounded confidence of someone who has looked at the worst and decided they can handle it.
Habit 4. Live in this moment, only this one. Here is a question I want you to sit with. Where are you right now? Not physically. I know where you are physically, but where is your mind right now? If you're honest, truly uncomfortably honest, it's probably not fully here. Part of it is replaying something from last week. Part of it is worrying about something next month. Part of it is somewhere between a half-remembered regret and a half-imagined catastrophe. And the present moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this quiet second, is sitting untouched, unclaimed. The human mind is by nature a time traveler. This is not a flaw, it's an extraordinary gift. The ability to remember the past and plan for the future is what separates us from almost every other creature on Earth. But like all powerful things, it can turn against us. When memory becomes rumination, when you replay the same painful moment on a loop that never resolves, that is not learning from the past. That is being imprisoned by it.
when planning becomes catastrophizing, when every thought of tomorrow is shadowed by a worst-case scenario, that is not preparation. That is suffering an imaginary future that may never arrive. And stress, almost all stress, lives in those two places. Not here, not now, but there, in a past you cannot change, or a future you cannot yet touch. Marcus Aurelius understood this with piercing clarity. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." And elsewhere, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." He wasn't saying, don't plan, don't remember, don't learn. He was saying, stop living in the wrong tense. Because the present moment is the only place where life is actually happening, the only place where you have any power, the only place where action is possible, the only place where peace can be found. The past is memory. You cannot act in memory. The future is imagination. You cannot act in imagination. But right here, in this breath, you can choose your posture, your attitude, your next word, your next step. This is where you live. This is where your life is. Now, I want to give you something practical here, because live in the present is advice that's easy to hear and remarkably hard to actually do. Here is the Stoic technique. When you notice your mind has left the present, and you will notice if you're paying attention, don't fight it. Fighting your thoughts is like fighting quicksand. The harder you struggle, the deeper you sink. Instead, acknowledge it, literally, internally. Say, I notice I'm in the future right now, or I notice I'm in the past. That moment of noticing is everything, because you cannot be lost in a thought and aware of a thought at the same time. The moment you observe the mind's wandering, you are already no longer wandering. You are back. Then, and this is crucial, bring your attention to something physical, right now. The weight of your body in the chair, the temperature of the air on your skin, the rhythm of your own breathing. These are anchors to the present. They are always available, they cost nothing, and they work. Epictetus said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." That tranquility doesn't come from changing your circumstances. It comes from being fully in them, from meeting this moment exactly as it is, without the weight of everywhere else you could be instead. Stress cannot survive full presence. It needs you somewhere else to live. Come home to now, again and again and again. That is the practice. That is the peace.
Habit 5. Choose discomfort before it chooses you. This is the habit that the modern world has worked hardest to talk you out of. We live in the age of comfort optimization.
One-click delivery, temperature-controlled everything, instant entertainment, frictionless everything. And I want to say clearly, comfort is not evil. Ease is not shameful. The reduction of unnecessary suffering is a genuine human achievement. But somewhere along the way, we confuse the elimination of unnecessary suffering with the avoidance of all discomfort. And that confusion, that subtle, cultural, ambient confusion, is making us fragile. When you have never been cold, a cold room feels like a crisis. When you have never been hungry, missing a meal feels like an emergency. When you have never sat with silence, 5 minutes without your phone feels unbearable. And what happens to a mind that has never practiced difficulty when real difficulty arrives? It panics, it fractures, it experiences normal human hardship as a catastrophe. Seneca saw this clearly in the Rome of his time, a civilization that had grown so wealthy that its citizens were becoming, paradoxically, more anxious, not less. He wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." And so he practiced. deliberately, voluntarily, discomfort. Not self-punishment, not masochism, but rehearsal. He would spend several days each month living as simply as possible. Coarse bread, thin clothing, no luxuries, no servants, no comfort. And at the end of those days, he wrote, he would ask himself, is this the worst I feared? Is this what I was trying to avoid? And the answer was always the same. This is manageable. I am more capable than I thought. There is a psychological phenomenon called stress inoculation, the idea that exposing yourself to small, controlled doses of stress builds resilience to larger, uncontrolled stress. Modern therapy uses it, military training uses it, elite athletes use it. But the Stoics discovered it 2,000 years ago. The habit is not complicated, but it requires intention. Every day, in some small way, choose the harder thing. Take the cold shower instead of the hot one. Do the difficult conversation instead of postponing it. Skip the comfort snack when you're bored, not hungry. Walk instead of driving when you have time. Sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes instead of reaching for your phone. None of these are extreme. None of them require suffering, but each one sends a message to your nervous system. A quiet, powerful, accumulating message. I can handle discomfort. I am not fragile. Difficulty does not destroy me. And over time, week by week, month by month, your relationship with stress begins to change. Not because your life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Ryan Holiday later popularized this as the obstacle is the way, the Stoic idea that resistance, difficulty, and discomfort are not interruptions to your growth. They are your growth. Every time you choose the cold shower, you are practicing for the cold moment in life that you didn't choose. Every time you have the hard conversation voluntarily, you are training yourself for the hard conversation that will one day arrive without warning. Every time you sit with discomfort and don't run, you are building a self that stress cannot easily break. Stress feeds on avoidance. Avoidance tells your nervous system, that thing is dangerous, don't go near it. Voluntary exposure says the opposite. That thing is uncomfortable. I went there, I came back, I'm still here. Starve the avoidance, feed the courage. You are far more resilient than you know, but you'll never discover that by staying only in comfort.
Habit 6. Remember that this day will end. Memento mori. These two Latin words are perhaps the most famous in all of Stoic philosophy. They translate simply as, remember that you will die. And I understand immediately the instinct to turn away. We live in a culture that has declared war on mortality. We don't talk about death at dinner tables. We don't put it in our morning reflections. We keep it at arm's length, tucked away behind distraction and euphemism, hoping that if we don't look at it, it won't look at us. But here's the thing about that strategy. It doesn't work. The awareness of death doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It goes underground. It becomes a low, ambient dread, the background hum of anxiety that many people feel but can't quite name. The Stoics did something different. They looked at death directly, not with morbidity, not with despair, but with honesty. And through that honesty, they found something extraordinary: freedom. Marcus Aurelius, who lost several of his children, who watched Rome ravaged by plague, who spent years at war, surrounded by death, wrote this: "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And elsewhere, how many a Chrysippus, how many a Socrates, how many an Epictetus have time swallowed up? Even the greatest minds in history, gone. Even the wisest, the most beloved, the most powerful. Time swallows everything eventually. And rather than finding that terrifying, the Stoics found it clarifying. Because when you hold your own mortality gently in your hands,
not as a threat, but as a fact, the lens through which you see your daily stress changes completely. The email that made you furious this morning, set it against the fullness of your life, against the millions of people who have lived and loved and lost before you, against the brevity of the time you actually have. How significant is it now? The argument with your partner last night, the colleague who undermined you in the meeting, the project that's running behind. I'm not saying these things don't matter. I'm saying, compared to what? The Roman generals who rode in triumph through Rome had a slave standing behind them in the chariot, whispering in their ear, "Memento mori," remember you are mortal. Not to diminish their victory, but to keep it in perspective, to remind them, in the height of glory, that this too shall pass, and therefore be present for it, be here for it. Here is the practical application of this habit. Once a day, perhaps at the end of it, perhaps in a quiet moment in the afternoon, ask yourself, if this were my last week, would this stress matter to me? Not dramatically, not with existential crisis, just gently, honestly, and let the answer do its work. You will almost certainly discover that most of what you're carrying would evaporate immediately in the light of that question. And what remains, what doesn't evaporate, those are the things worth caring about. The people, the moments, the work that means something. The rest is noise. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." Balance life's books each day. Don't go to sleep in debt to your own life, having spent the whole day on things that didn't matter, having stressed about things that will be forgotten, having saved the important things for some future version of yourself who has more time. That future version may not arrive. This day, this specific, unrepeatable day, will end. And then it will be gone forever. There is no version of this exact Tuesday that you will ever get back. Let memento mori not frighten you. Let it awaken you. Let it shrink your stress to its true size. Let it expand your gratitude to its true fullness. And let it whisper every day, like that slave in the chariot, "You are mortal. This matters. Be here."
Habit 7. Want less, need even less, appreciate what is. We've come to the last habit, and in many ways, it is the one that holds all the others together. I want to tell you something about the world you and I are living in. There are teams of psychologists, behavioral economists, and data scientists, brilliant, well-paid, enormously talented people whose full-time job is to make you feel like you don't have enough. Not because they're evil, but because dissatisfaction is extraordinarily profitable. Every algorithm that shows you something slightly better than what you have, a slightly nicer home, a slightly more successful career, a slightly more beautiful life, is doing so because a dissatisfied person clicks more, buys more, scrolls more, stays on the platform longer. Your restlessness is someone else's revenue. Your inadequacy is someone else's business model. And we absorb it so completely, so constantly, so invisibly that many of us have entirely forgotten what enough feels like. We are hungry in ways that food can't satisfy, restless in ways that sleep can't cure, stressed in ways that one more achievement won't resolve, because we have been trained by 1,000 daily messages to always look slightly ahead of where we are. And the Stoics looked at this in their own version, because Rome had its own culture of status and acquisition, and said, "This is a trap, and it is a trap you are building for yourself." Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In Seneca, the wealthy one, remember, the man who had more than almost anyone, wrote to his friend, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Think about that. Real poverty isn't an absence of things. Real poverty is an absence of contentment. And contentment, that quiet,
radical, deeply countercultural sense of this is enough, I am enough, right now is enough, is something that no external circumstance can give you. It can only be cultivated from within. The Stoics had a word for this, amor fati, love of fate, love of what is. Not passive resignation, not pretending that everything is perfect or that wanting to improve your life is shameful, but a deep, grounded, clear-eyed acceptance of the present moment, exactly as it is, as the only moment you actually have. And from that acceptance, gratitude becomes possible. Real gratitude, not the kind you perform on social media, not the forced positivity of lists, but the sudden, quiet surprise of it. The moment you look up from your wanting and realize there is so much already here. The person who loves you, the morning light through your window, the fact that your body carried you here today without you even asking it to, the ordinary, irreplaceable texture of your specific, unrepeatable life. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. Despite ruling an empire, despite his access to everything, he returned again and again to a profound appreciation for ordinary things. He wrote of a humble loaf of bread with the same attention he gave to philosophy. He wrote of the cracks in aged marble as evidence of time's passing and found it beautiful. He was, in the deepest sense, a man who had learned to see. And that seeing, that capacity for genuine appreciation, is available to every human being, not just to emperors, to you, right now, in the life you already have. Here is the habit. Each evening, before sleep, name 3 things from today that were genuinely good. Not extraordinary, not Instagram-worthy, just genuinely, quietly good. A warm cup of coffee, a conversation that made you laugh, a moment when the light was beautiful, a task you finished, a person who was kind to you. And as you name them, feel them. Don't just list them intellectually. Let the warmth of them land in your body. Let them be real. Do this every night for 30 days, and I promise you, you will begin to notice that your life contains far more goodness than your stressed mind had been willing to acknowledge. Because stress narrows attention. It makes you a tunnel vision machine, scanning only for threat, lack, and danger. Gratitude widens attention. It opens the aperture of your awareness to include everything that is already quietly right. Seneca said, Omnia Lucilius, aliena sunt, tempum tantum nostra est. Everything, Lucilius, belongs to others. Time alone is ours. Time alone is ours. Not the car, not the title, not the approval, not the achievements. Only time. And every moment you spend in restless wanting, in chasing the next thing, the better thing, the missing thing, is a moment of your time spent in service of dissatisfaction. Choose differently. Want less. Need even less. Appreciate what is. And watch, slowly, gently, profoundly, as stress loses its hold on you. Not because your life becomes perfect, but because you finally, truly, see how imperfect and perfect it already is.
So here we are, 7 habits practiced by philosophers, emperors, and former slaves, people who faced war, loss, illness, poverty, and power, and chose deliberately to meet life with wisdom instead of fear. Let me walk through them one final time, not as a list, but as a path. Ask what you control, because most of your stress is borrowed. Put down what was never yours to carry. Begin your morning with yourself, because the first voice you hear shapes the whole day. Let it be your own. Face your worst fears in the light, because fear grows in darkness. When you look at it clearly, it shrinks, and you discover you are stronger than you thought. Live in this moment, only this one, because the present is the only place life is actually happening. Stress needs you somewhere else. Come home. Choose discomfort before it chooses you, because resilience is built, not given. Every voluntary difficulty makes you harder to break.
Remember that this day will end, because your mortality is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It reminds you, this matters. Be here. Want less, appreciate more, because contentment is not the reward at the end of striving. It is the practice you begin right now with exactly what you have. I want to leave you with something Epictetus said. This man who began his life in chains, who had nothing, who was broken in body but never in mind. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." A wise man, not a perfect man, not a man without pain or loss or difficulty, but a wise one, someone who has learned through practice, through habit, through daily, patient, deliberate effort to meet the world with open hands instead of a clenched fist. That is what these habits build. Not a stress-free life, because no such thing exists, but a stress-resilient self. A self that breathes when others panic, that chooses when others react, that finds stillness in the middle of the noise. Not because the noise has stopped, but because the stillness is no longer drowned out by it. You don't need a perfect life to be free from stress. You need a trained mind. And a trained mind doesn't collapse under the ordinary weight of being human. It breathes, it returns, it chooses again and again to come back to the only place peace has ever lived. Right here, right now, within you. These habits are not a destination, they are a direction. Every morning you reflect, you are walking toward freedom. Every moment you release what you cannot control, you are lighter. Every night you find something to be grateful for, you are richer than you know. Begin today, not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when you feel ready. Today, because the Stoics didn't wait for the perfect moment, they created it with every conscious, deliberate, courageous choice to meet life with wisdom instead of fear. And you can do the same. Subscribe to Stoic Sage Academy for more wisdom, because the mind you train today is the life you will live tomorrow. And that life, your life, is worth every moment of the practice.